Hi, Joe Yateman here with yuccaflute.com. Today I want to introduce you to 4 different flutes that were made by yuccaflute.com, which are made by myself and are available for sale there. I'll try to spend no more than a couple of minutes on each one, so this will be short. This first flute that I want to talk about is made from an agave stock, and if you can see, it's got a wonderful pattern of colors and textures and patterns in it. This was an older, weathered stock, but after a lot of sanding and some finishing, really gives it a lovely look and feel. Reminds me of ancient mastodon ivory that I've seen on some things. This one also has a slightly curvy waviness to it, which I did quite on purpose. Or the stock was naturally curvy, but I preserved it on purpose rather than picking a straighter section. This is in the key of A. And it's 432 hertz, so it's what some people call earth tone. This one has even 1-inch spacing on the finger holes, and it's very comfortable, very pleasant, easy to index, and it has a very simple block also made from another piece of agave stock. The way I like to make my flutes, by the way, I split them in half, hollow out the insides appropriately, and I end up gluing them back together after making the true sound hole and the slow air chamber exit hole. But my method also involves making the mouthpiece directly on the flute itself rather than attaching it from a separate piece of wood. Very simple, very low tech, but also I think very pleasant. Here's a quick sound sample of this A432. This flute is 21 inches in overall length. The bore is 13.5, and it's got a slightly oblong bore. It's not exactly round. It's about 3/4 inch in one dimension and 7/8 of an inch in the other. As I said, 1-inch finger hole spacing. One of my favorite little flutes. Very lively, very pleasant sound. Moving to the next sort of tonal register. This is an F-sharp, so it's a little bit deeper. This one was made from a yucca stalk. I'm pretty sure that yucca is a variety of agave. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it to be. And there's 37 or 40 different types of yucca alone. So one of the beauties of making flutes in this way is that each one is different based on the type of plant that was used and the size and dimensions of the stalk that were used. Where on the stalk, was it low to the ground or high in the air, just under the seed pod? These all make differences. This particular one has got nice patterns in it where leaves of the plant were once attached. Now it's smooth, but there's still this visual pattern. This one also has some decorative sinew bindings. Traditionally, these would have been used to hold the 2 flute halves together, but I put them on for purely cosmetic reasons and sort of pay homage to the traditional flute makers. This, is, as I said, is an F-sharp. It also uses even finger hole spacing, but these are 1 1/16 inch apart, whereas the first one that I showed you, they were 1 inch apart. I made them slightly more apart because personally I find it a little bit more comfortable. And as long as you've got room on the flute for it, I like to do that. This one's overall length is 22.5 inches, and the bore itself is 16 inches, and it's a very consistent 7/8 of an inch, a very round bore. Once again, a little bit of sound from it. Now we'll move from this F-sharp to an F. You'll notice first that this is somewhat longer. This particular has 1 inch even finger hole spacing. It is 25.5 inches overall length, longer than the other ones that I've showed you. Its bore length is 18 7/8. So I think the aspect ratio on this, it might be a little bit on the long and skinny side, but it turned out very, very nice indeed. Its bore diameter is 7/8 of an inch. A couple of interesting things about this. First, even though it has the even fingerhole spacing 1 inch apart, you'll notice that the bottom 3 holes and the top 3 holes are separated by a larger distance. And in the center of that distance, I put a small spot of inlay of a mineral called chrysocolla. It's very similar to turquoise, I suppose. There's also a chrysocolla inlay at the very foot of the flute that actually is the filling in of a track made by a bug or a worm or something like that back when this was still on the plant. Another interesting thing about this particular flute is the side that you're looking at, the right side of the flute, has a nice reddish brown tone. The opposite side turned out with a mottled effect. Reminds me of marble or almost of a bowling ball. And I think the reason for this is that the wood on this side of the stalk was softer, and it absorbed the stain that I used more readily. And on this side, it was much denser and didn't absorb the stain as uniformly. At first, I was unhappy about that, and now I wished I knew how to recreate it, because I think it's a very special, one-of-a-kind, lovely look. This is also, the block is also made from a piece of agave stalk. And here's a quick sound sample. Some have told me that it sounds clarinet-like to them, but I just think it sounds like a nice traditional native flute. Here's the sound. One of my favorites. I'll be sad to see this one go when it does, but as with the other flutes, I guess eventually it will. This one also uses tuning holes at the bottom. I don't do that often, but I did it because I needed to shorten the flute to tune it the way I wanted to, but at the same time I didn't want to lose this bug track that I had used for inlay. So I kept that extra inch of flute and drilled the tuning holes into the flute, which effectively shortens the acoustic length of the flute by about that much. And the last flute that I want to talk about in this video is also made from a yucca stalk. This one is an E flat, so it's almost a D. It's quite deep, very dense, very woody, not at all light and airy as some yucca and agave stalk flutes are. This one also has 1 inch finger hole spacing, making it very comfortable, but they are spaced out an extra 1/8 or 1/4 in the middle as an acoustic adjustment because of the overall bore diameter. This is 1 1/8 inch, which is easily doable, but I would say it's near the top of the range that I like to do for yucca and agave stalk flutes. As with all of the others, it has an integral mouthpiece shaped directly into the stalk for simplicity primarily, and it also has a block that was made out of another section of yucca. Here's a quick sound sample of this one. Very deep, very clean, very crisp and sharp, very pleasant. I think I mentioned this might be one that I keep. I can't decide just yet. One of the things that I like about this flute, besides its overall shape and size, it's similar in size to a High Spirits Condor flute, one of their bass flutes in E, perhaps. One of the things that I really like about it is the texture. It's got some wonderful coloring. Here's sort of a natural black coloring in the wood. And I did apply a little bit of stain to it to bring out the colors and the patterns, but this is 97% natural. Just a wonderful, wonderful pattern, colors, textures. It's not completely round and smooth. It's got a slightly knobby, globby texture to it, which I really like. This one was also treated with polyurethane, but then buffed to take all the shine off of it, so leaving it with a nice natural look. That's it for today. Quick review of an A, an F sharp, an F, and this B flat, and then I'll send you out with another quick little jingle. That's it for today.